Behind every single life-saving medicine, there's obviously a ton of incredible science, but there's also this hidden force, this invisible hand that guides those breakthroughs from a lab bench all the way to your pharmacy. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that force that makes modern medicine even possible. We're talking about the world of regulatory affairs.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. What if a cure for something was discovered, but it never, ever reached a single patient? It just gets stuck in a lab forever. I mean, that's a pretty terrifying thought, right? And it really highlights this massive challenge we have in medicine. How do you get these amazing innovations safely into the hands of the people who desperately need them?
And that is exactly where our unsung hero comes in, the regulatory affairs professional. They're that navigator. They're the critical link who makes sure that whole journey from a new discovery to an actual patient is successful, safe, and as efficient as it can possibly be.
All right, so let's get into it. Here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at how they act as this bridge between science and safety. Then, we're going to follow them on that long, winding road of drug development. We'll even see what happens after a drug gets approved, because the job isn't over. And finally, we'll tie it all together and see why this role is just so incredibly important.
Okay, first up, bridging science and safety. So this is really all about their main function, acting as that absolutely critical link between pure scientific innovation and, all the strict government rules and regulations.
So let's define our terms. What is regulatory affairs, really? Well, at its core, it's the profession that makes absolutely sure that any new medicine, biologic, or medical product meets all the legal and scientific standards set by big regulatory bodies, like the FDA here in the US or the EMA over in Europe. They're the ones who guarantee that every new treatment is proven to be both safe and effective long before it ever gets to you.
And this slide just illustrates perfectly the two worlds they live in and connect. I mean, think about it. On one side, you've got the R&D teams with all this super complex data and these amazing breakthrough discoveries. And on the other side, you have the government agencies with their incredibly strict guidelines that are all about one thing: patient safety. The regulatory affairs pro, they're the translator. They take all that complex science and turn it into clear, structured language that regulators can actually understand and, most importantly, trust.
Okay, let's get to the real meat of their work now and see how this all comes together. We're going to follow our navigator through that incredibly long and complex journey of developing a brand new drug, from the very first idea in a lab all the way to a real patient.
You can basically break this journey down into 3 critical stages, and you better believe regulatory affairs is deeply, deeply involved in every single one. It all kicks off with early strategy, then it moves into that all-important clinical trial phase, and it all culminates in that final, massive submission for approval.
So right at the very beginning, we're talking before a single human has even been involved. Their job is to create the master plan. They're the ones advising the scientists on exactly how to design their studies, so they'll meet all the required standards. They map out the most efficient way to get this thing submitted. And you have to understand, a mistake here isn't just a delay. It could mean a really promising treatment never even gets a fair shot.
All right, so once the drug is actually ready for human testing, these folks take the lead on all the official paperwork, and there's a lot of it. This includes preparing what's called an investigational new drug, or IND, application. Just think of it like the official permission slip you need to even start human trials. They manage all the back and forth with the authorities, and they make sure the research isn't just good science, but that it's 100% ethical. Now this part. This is where the sheer scale of their work really hits you. We're talking about compiling the final submission, the new drug application. This isn't just a form, it's a massive, massive collection of evidence. We're talking hundreds of thousands, sometimes over 1 million pages, that document every bit of research from years of work. And it has to be organized and presented with absolute critical accuracy. Because one little mistake, one unclear section, could delay a life-saving medicine for years. The stakes are just that high.
So you might be thinking, okay, great, the drug got the final approved stamp, job done, right? Well, not so fast. For our navigator in regulatory affairs, the work is actually far from over. The journey, and the responsibility, continues long after that medicine is available on the market.
What this really shows is that their role becomes this ongoing cycle of safety and vigilance. They are constantly tracking real-world patient data once a drug is out there. I mean, think about it. Have you ever seen a new warning get added to the label of a medicine you've been taking for years? That is regulatory affairs at work. Their job is to make sure, for the entire life cycle of that product, that its benefits always outweigh any potential risks.
Okay, so this all sounds incredibly important, but
What makes this job so demanding? What are the unique challenges? Let's take a quick look at the kind of pressures and complexities these professionals are dealing with every single day in this really high-stakes field.
Well, for one thing, they're basically navigating a landscape that is always changing. The rules and regulations are constantly evolving, and what's required in one country can be totally different from another. And on top of all that, they're under this immense pressure to get drugs approved quickly, while at the same time never ever compromising on patient safety. It is an absolutely incredible balancing act.
So let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. Why does this role matter so much? Why does it have such a profound impact on every single one of us? Well, it's because when you get right down to it, they are the guardians of both public health and scientific integrity.
And really, that's the bottom line. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? At the end of the day, these are the professionals who make sure that the medicines you and your family rely on aren't just effective, but that they've met the absolute highest standards of safety and scientific rigor. They're the ones making sure the science is sound and that the public is safe, period.
So, what's the big takeaway here? I guess it's this. The next time you hear about some amazing new medical breakthrough on the news, maybe you'll think about the invisible journey it took to get there, and about the dedicated, unsung navigators who work tirelessly behind the scenes to guide it safely, all the way to you.